Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Into the Storm. We have a special guest who's actually quickly became one of our best referral partners here at Bison Ventures. And he's only been in the business for 2.5 years. We have Brad York here, and he is currently working for the Brokery in Arcadia. Are you working in the North Central office or the...
I'm North Central.
Okay,
yeah.
North Central. So they have 3 offices right now, Arcadia, South Scottsdale, and North Central.
Yeah.
Brad is also not dating my sister because he's gay, but they hang out as if they're a couple. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, obviously, because you've been so good to us, and we love hanging out with you. But you also have a really cool story. And before you got into the real estate business, you're 50 now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2 more days.
So, okay, 2 more days. So you were 47 and a half, right?
Yeah.
When you got into the real estate business. So, but before that, you had a massive career in the theater world, right? Theatrics, or is it theater? How do we say it?
I've thought of it as massive, but a lot of people have had more massive careers.
Well,
than me.
I mean, you're not in major motion pictures, but you've been in that space for a very, very long time. Performing arts.
Definitely. Yeah.
Boom, there we go.
Yeah.
So we usually start off by asking you your history, right? So like where you're from, what your childhood was. So let's just start there. So where are you from?
So I was born in a little house on the prairie.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. I love it.
No, I'm from Portland, Oregon, actually, up in the Pacific Northwest. Whole family has been there for generations. So, in fact, I think actually family came over on the Pioneer Trail or the Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Yeah, Oregon
Good.
Trail. Yeah. So we've been there for a while.
People our age know that from the video game more
That's
than we
right.
do from from the actual story. But
1883.
1883. Yes, and I remember watching that and thinking to myself, man, I didn't know it was that hard. That's some roughness.
Right?
Brutal.
Wow, terrible.
It was brutal. Absolutely brutal. No, yeah, from Portland, Oregon, born and raised there. Went to high school, college, Linfield College, a small liberal arts school down in McMinnville, which is now kind of well known for Oregon's wine country there, Yamhill. And then came down to Arizona State for my master's degree, where I like to joke I had $51,000 in student loans, where I mastered in coming out for the most part. Yeah.
So that's when it happened.
That's when it happened.
Well, let's not go there this quickly. So what kind of kid were you like in elementary school and high school?
I mean, absolutely a terrible child.
Okay.
No, I mean that honestly.
Really?
I'm the youngest of 3. My sister's 14 years older than me, and my brother's 10 years older than me. So if anybody's old enough to know, when the doctor called and told my mom she was pregnant, she said, "What do you mean the rabbit died?" Which they used to test pregnancies on rabbits, and the rabbits died, which I thought was horrible when I found out about it.
Oh, wow.
But it's true. Anyway, yeah. So I was, because
Were you into sports? Were you into the theater at that time? Or
no, I really was.
Arts?
I didn't have a lot of. I just was. I truly was behaviorally challenged growing up. I don't know what it was, but did counseling as a kid. I think I was probably one of the first kids in there that they medicated to try and balance out behavior. But my mom got me into piano lessons, and I think early on the arts teachers and things saw some positive things in me in that way, and started to do some musicals in elementary school, and then into getting into choir. And then my dad also got me involved in football, so I started playing Pop Warner football my 7th grade year and played all the way up to my senior year of high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were in. So what position did you play?
I was a running back and a cornerback, but I have absolutely terrible eyes. I do not have good depth perception. So my brother, who was an exceptional athlete, would come to the games and be sitting in the stands, and they'd put me in, and we were in this wishbone formation where you're swinging out and they pitch you the ball, and the ball would just punk right off of them. And my brother would be sitting in the stands, go, "Just give him the ball." I was the fastest kid on the team. That's where my
so you need to hand it off, and
I loved to hit people. I mean, I really did. I was a really great practice player. I was second string running back. Though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you a big kid? Were you like...
No, 147 pounds.
Wow.
And
At what age?
Of 16, 17, 18, I was about 147 pounds, yeah. I look back on that now, turning 51, and go, man, I'd take that 147 pounds. Yeah.
So now you're only 157.
Oh, yeah, in my mind, yeah. Yeah, in the dark, yeah.
So was it a small school? Small town?
No.
No?
Portland's a major city.
So I know Portland.
yeah.
Okay, you were right in Portland. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're in Portland. We were there. 9 high schools, and Wilson High School is in the West Valley, or not the West Valley. I said the West Valley, the West Hills of Portland, and relatively affluent. My dad was an educator, but I went to school with kids who were dentists, doctors, and lawyers, and
right.
I came to school in a 1977 Chrysler Newport that was huge with a 400 engine in it, burgundy, and all of my other friends had Jeeps and Mercedes-Benz and BMWs, but they thought the car was kind of cool. You know, look back, it was very retro.
Now you'd be like, "Where's that car?
That's
I would love that car."
Yeah.
Okay, so you graduated high school, and did you have girlfriends in high school?
I did.
Okay.
I mean, I did, and I don't remember ever really thinking that it was that big of a deal. I just knew in the late 80s and into the 90s, kind of before Clinton, and there's kind of an evolution in the 90s of the topic, that it wasn't a safe space. So it wasn't until I was 23 that I actually
really
yeah.
So even when you were at ASU, would that be your freshman year at ASU, or your master's?
So my 4 years as an undergrad, I didn't date anybody.
Okay.
I look back now, and I hope she's not watching this, but there was this girl that I really liked because we were good friends and she was awesome, but she didn't like me, and so there was always kind of like, oh, it's too bad.
Right.
She doesn't like Brad. So I never it was always an excuse. So, but yeah, it was a small liberal arts school. There were only about 1,500 students there. And so it wasn't until ASU where there were 50,000 students.
Right.
That
and you were in a program. So what was the program called at ASU? Your master's in what?
It's the School of Music. So
Okay.
I got a out-of-state scholarship for vocal performance to come down. And I was a master. It's a master's in musical theater performance. So I was 3 years. It was supposed to be 3 or 4 years. It was supposed to be a 2-year program. It took a little longer than it should have. Yeah.
Were you working at that time?
No, I was definitely only doing productions that were part of the degree program.
So what does that consist of in the degree, that degree program? Is it like everything that's encompassed in theater and music?
Interestingly, my undergrad was in vocal performance, which is music. So that was very strict on theory and sight reading and things like that, really learning about music itself, how it's written. And then the program at ASU was a bit of a move into more performance-based, but it was still pretty music-focused, like how music
it's like academic.
is academic, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Programs today, a lot of kids who are going to good musical theater programs, either for undergraduate or graduate programs, the focus is dance, acting, dancing, and singing. Because if you're going to go have a career, you're going to need to be able to do all 3 of those things in some capacity. You're going to be better at one than the other. But I'm a singer, actor, and then I like to call myself a mover. So yeah.
What does that mean? Mover?
I really don't dance.
Oh, you don't. No. Okay. No. So you got 2 of the 3.
Yeah.
So does everybody come into that program like aspiring to go to like New York or go to LA to be in films, or is it mostly just say I want to go on Broadway and I want to sing? And
I think I think the answer is yes. I mean, Broadway's like the penultimate. If you make it there, I mean, it's not everybody's gonna make it there. And over all these years, and I look back on the scope of my performance career, I was never on Broadway, but I have had the opportunity to do just incredible performances across the country and here in Arizona. For me, I think there was a lack of focus, actually. Singing was one of the only things that I was really good at. Like, and some people have very extra special talents, and I seem to have a voice. I'm a baritone that could win some competitions and stand out. The accolades came. So going back to football, it was my junior year in high school. In the cleanest uniform there is, because like I said, I was a practice player. I sang the national anthem for one of the football games with my helmet underneath my arm. And after the game, the music choral teacher came down and grabbed me, and she goes, "You're going to audition for the musical," and it happened to be The Pirates of Penzance, and I was the Pirate King. And from there, it kind of just all went. Did another musical my senior year.
Were you like hiding your voice at this point? Like,
no, it was always there. I just don't know. And I look back and listen to the recording of me singing Emile de Beck, who was supposed to be like 60 in the South Pacific my senior year. I mean, it was awful. I mean, it's almost cringeworthy to like listen to. But there was a spark of something there. And so scholarships came for college. And I think really I honed being a singer in my undergraduate program. And then definitely honed the musical theater performance aspect, the acting at ASU. Yeah. But so that's why, I mean, it's like I was done with my master's program. I was like, well, what am I going to go do? So I moved to New York. That's kind of like what I was supposed to do. Well, 10 years there and auditioning and performing. It took a while to go to New York and have to learn that, you're really going to have to give up the idea of health insurance or getting paid once a week. You're going to have to temp. You're going to have to wait tables. And so I left because I performed and I was reaching 40 and I was like, I really don't want to act like I like being a waiter any longer.
Right.
So that was kind of the end of that.
Well, I mean, let's talk about then Jen Newman, right? Because she's been on here as well. So
did you say it correctly? The Jen Newman?
Oh, sorry. Jen Newman.
There's quote marks for that.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So you two met at ASU, and then you guys both went to New York to kind of together, right?
Yeah. I mean, we follow similar paths. Jen and her husband Jim got married. They came to New York. At one point on our floor, there were 5 apartments, and 4 of them were ASU grads. So we were kind of like friends. Like you come out, go into the other one, come out and go into the other one.
Which character were you?
I don't know. Probably a little
like
more
Rachel.
Joey. Yeah. I don't know if we had a Phoebe.
Joey.
So Jen and I have kind of continued to follow different paths, but hers has been family oriented, and then they have their daughter. She and her husband came back and forth to New York a couple of times, and I left in 2010, and then they were there a number of years after. So, but then they came back to Arizona, and so the friendship has always been there.
That's cool.
Aren't you Lila's godfather?
I am, I believe. There was a point where
we're
the
gonna clip that part out.
Jen,
maybe the unofficial.
Jen will say, of course. What I do know is I did get a call at one point on if something does happen to us,
it's a guardian.
A guardian of sort, and which of course I've been Uncle Brad to that child from the beginning, and she's now in college. I wouldn't have to fend for her, but she's a special kid.
So you weren't her spiritual leader.
I know. I probably no. I haven't been anybody's spiritual leader. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's kind of segue into where I think why you're kind of having the success you're having in the real estate space, and I think it's a good topic to get into because, when you move back, you've had a full-blown career, if not 2 careers, which has kind of led to what we think is like the relationship building side of things, and why your database, so to speak, is going to continue to drive your business in the real estate space. So let's talk about, so when you came back here, what was the first thing you did? Did you go work for Arizona Broadway Theatre right away?
So the founders of ABT were my neighbors in New York.
Oh, wow.
We're all actors.
Okay.
Kyle, who is one of the producers, he was Raoul in the Hamburg version of Phantom of the Opera. So the New York version was transferred to Hamburg. It was in German. So he'd been performing. Cass has a master's degree and an incredible voice herself and had been performing. And we lived on the same street, and they at one point, after 9/11, had decided that New York perhaps wasn't where they were going to raise kids. And so they said to me one day, well, we're going to go to Arizona and start a theater. And I was kind of like, well, are you going to go to the cultural wasteland of America to start a theater?
Right.
But that was in 2001. And so as the years went on, I did a couple of shows. And like I said, I'd come to the point where I really was done with New York. A relationship had ended after 12 years, I think. And I'd been doing the performing and the waiting tables for some time. And so I'd reached out to Kyle because I'd kind of had an interest in producing myself. I'd produced a show in New York, small, up at the Riverside Church, which was kind of got me into the promoting and getting a cast and understanding the finances of some of it. So Kyle and I had been talking, and at one point I was like, I really would be interested in starting a theater of my own someday. He goes, well, if you ever want to come back to Arizona, come. So I did. I arrived on January 4th of 2010, and I was doing some outside sales at that time, going across the valley to other communities in the East Valley, 55 plus, who would have an interest in a dinner and show type setting. And I set up bus tours and would get on the bus, and then I was kind of like the chaperone for them. We'd play bus bingo on their way over from Mesa to Peoria. And I really came in strong. I mean, I was dressed up and ready to impress, and I was ready to impress there at the theater. And looking back, a couple of friends who are really close friends now, who I've known now for 13 years, said, you really were kind of an asshole when you arrived.
Just cocky?
I'm fastidious about things when I want them to be a certain way. Maturity has quelched that a little bit, I think. But I can be a little intense.
Yeah.
And at one point, the marketing director, who is a good friend, and I appreciate him so much, I think in 2011, somewhere along the line, I think he'd had enough of me, and he ended up leaving his marketing position and going off and has continued to do great things elsewhere. But I was offered the position of marketing director at that time. Now, I have a minor in mass communications, public relations, and how to write a good newspaper article, but I had no background in marketing except for kind of being a bit of a ham. So so that took off, and that was through 2020. So really my professional, where I look at myself now and what I learned during that time working for an arts organization, the responsibility of the role. You've got a lot riding on budgets during the year, sales numbers about attendance of audiences and things like that. But that's really where I think I honed being an adult professional. I don't know that happened as an actor. I'd like to go back now and be that person then. Right. Who I am now, and see what would happen. I don't know if I had the right direction and motivation at that time. Like we always talk about in real estate, you're going to be your own CEO, CFO, marketing director, all of that. But that's what being an actor is like as well. And I don't think I applied that back then. And it's taken some time doing this now to put those things into place, because the only person you're going to be accountable to is first yourself, and then of course your clients as you're working through. So ABT gave me that.
That's awesome.
That thing. It's
funny you say this, because it's okay. I'll finish this before I get to you. She's over there raising her hand. Yeah. You think about, like the structure of, like, if you're like an independent contractor as an actor, right? So you're there, so you have to be disciplined. Yep. You have to go and try to not interview, but audition, right?
Yeah.
You've got to find things. There's days you could be like, I just don't feel like doing it. It's very real. It relates really well to the real estate world, 100%. Right? But so that's why I think, younger people, unless you're super disciplined and you don't have a ton of bills and you don't have a whole lot going on, you can certainly just be like, I'm not going to do that today. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think like when you talk about being a self-proprietor now and back then, there were so many things that should have taken discipline that even today, I have to remind myself when I get up in the morning, I actually bought a lockbox for remote controls and my telephone to say, you got to put these in there. You've got 3 hours. You're not gonna. I've got my earbud in, or if the phone rings, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But really, some discipline like that to make it happen.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
We're so distracted.
And
we think that social media, Instagram and Facebook, are part of our careers as promoting ourselves. Really, if you break it down, you need to do a post in the morning, and then you need to put the phone away, because the other of the time you're just scrolling. Yeah. So it's a waste of time. But I will say it's fun, but it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to say was that looking at my career now, after 2.5 years in real estate, 2022 was a really good year, and the market has definitely changed with interest rates and such. The practical application of working the database, talking to my people, coffees, cocktails, dinners, that hasn't stopped. But what has slowed down are transactions and contracts. I have to remind myself, just like being an actor, I could do 10 auditions in a week and nobody would call me back. And you have to remind yourself, if you're going to go and look for instant gratification in the performing arts, it's not going to come. But it's the doing of it that, as time goes on, work's going to beget work. So one contract in the performing arts or in a show is then going to continue to repeat itself. That's where I find myself here in 2023, is that I'm doing the work and not everything's happening all the time.
Yeah.
But I know that the do down the road, those things will start to tick off. And it's a real kick in the pants in the mornings when the phone does ring, or those referrals or those relationships that you've worked on. That phone rings and someone says, "Hey, or I saw your post," or "Hey, I got your newsletter." So while it's not every day, like the gratification, it's very similar to that actor element of putting in the work. Yeah,
you just got to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
Trish?
I've changed what I was going to say before.
And I'm actually getting old enough now that as we're going here, I'm like, I was just thinking of something I was going to say. I can't remember what it was.
I need to write it down, or it's
right?
going to go away. Attrition. So we're in the same boat, right? We are continuing to just pound the pavement, so to speak. Business has slowed down. What I keep telling myself, and what Ryan and the rest of the team, we keep kind of encouraging one another, because it's kind of, sometimes it's discouraging.
It's not just one person.
Right. Is if we are steadfast in all those fundamental things, when the market does turn, there are fewer loan officers. There's certainly already been a huge, I don't know how many realtors have left in the last 9 months,
I
but
saw
it's
75,000 like a couple weeks ago.
Nationally.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
But even in the state, it's painful, but when we come out of this, we're going to be, all of us are going to be positioned well, because there's going to be less competition. And those things that we've been doing, those seeds we've been planting, are going to all start sprouting, right?
Totally.
It's just a matter of surviving until that happens.
Yeah. And nothing good comes from things always being easy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it has to hurt. And it's sometimes got to be heart-wrenching at times and scary.
Yeah.
But I think all of that put together can make for a better actor, a better marketing director, a better loan officer, and a better realtor. And I notice people who have had good successes and have some really big wins. When those wins don't continue and that hard work has to happen, that's kind of when you see the cream come to the top of who's going to stick around. Yeah.
You see the potential that I had a lucky year maybe attitude, right? And then, I'm seeing it right now with some people that were massively successful for the last decade that are doing no business right now.
Totally.
And I could just see the life being sucked out of them.
Yeah.
And them getting so not even wanting to do it anymore. Right. And then I'm telling you, they're doing $60 to $80 million in real estate business that are just there's something I want. I don't know. Maybe I want to do something else.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the day you decided to be an agent, though.
Sure.
So you're working over at, we'll say ABT.
Call it ABT. Yeah.
ABT. And did Jen call you and say, "Hey, you want to be a realtor"?
No,
How did this work?
Certainly had watched Jen and her success. One of the most diligent, driven people. From her performance career, through her dedication to her family, to the kind of agent she is. But, I was an outlier, really wishing her success. I was very busy doing what I was doing, and we always, shared the things that we liked outside of our business, just as best friends. But I was paying attention and could see a financial freedom that was being built for her and her family, and also an autonomy from answering to anybody but herself. So the big kicker, and there are so many people that will tell this story now, it's COVID. On March, I had been promoted to the director of marketing and development, and it had been something that I'd been working for some time. And I'd finally achieved a salary in a not-for-profit arts organization that was really going to be sustainable. And the leadership had decided to provide me with a team. So we worked on, the last half of 2019, really building a team of people, a communications coordinator, a graphic designer, an assistant in development, so that I wasn't the person who was always having to say, I can't get everything done. I'd watched this happen with other marketing directors or other development directors at the theater. So we roll over into 2020, and we're in January, and we were having our first big fundraising. It was called the Broadway Ball. It was February 29th. It was sold out. But it was the first week that the market had gotten hit with the COVID pandemic happening around the country. And I could feel a sense of something happening. 14 days later, the theater opened Chicago, which they'd been working to have for years. It was a sold-out Friday night. It was sold out Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and Sunday afternoon. And on that evening, which I believe was March 15th, Governor Ducey had said they were restricting all sorts of gatherings down to 50 or less people. So we had to come out on stage as a group and tell almost 400 people at 7 o'clock in the evening they had to go home. And they did, and we kind of all stood there dumbfounded, and we kind of thought, well, this will last a week. Maybe it's going to be a month. Well, March, April, May, June rolled around, and I could see the producers. I mean, they've invested everything into this organization. I could see that there was a fright. Arts organizations across the country, restaurateurs,
right.
What I noticed, and I've said this to the producers, and I think that they know this, is that they had to let go almost 250 people on that evening, because it was all of the theater side, there were restaurant side. There were 9 of us left. And I knew I was going to have to work very hard to continue to save their dream.
Yeah.
And I thought as 50 was approaching, I didn't want to do that for somebody else any longer.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down. It was a very hard decision to make, because it's almost like a breakup with really close colleagues and friends, to say, I am going to have to take the reins on my own life and career. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. That was still 2020. So it was November 2020 that I left the theater, and I had called Jen and told her I wanted to do this, and what would be the process. And she says, well, first of all, you need to get your license, so figure out when you're going to school. And I started in February. I think I was done in March. I took both the tests in April of 2021, and I'm definitely a C student. I found out, you need to get 75% to pass. I made it. I just made it.
75?
I think I was 77 on the state and 78 on the national. But
which is really kind of normal. I hear that all the time.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I left all 11 math questions till the end.
Right,
They kept saying that, if you know water rights, go for it. If you know the appraisal process, go for it. Right. But the math was a little like, a township and what is it? I can't even remember now.
I don't know either.
I know. But I did pass. And, of course, Jen provided the opportunity for me to talk to Oleg and Tucker, who are the brokers at the Brokery. And, I mean, because I was introduced to them from her and she had the relationship, they were willing to give me a try. Yeah. And so that's, all this time later, an enormous amount of growth at the Brokery. And like I said, 2022 was a perhaps unrealistic year for me as a first-year agent. But I had no expectations in 2022, and things went great. Going to 2023, I've got all these expectations, and I've got goals and a whole different process, and it's been a different year. But like I said, just keep working the process every day. At the end of the day, if I work with 3 clients and what they're for their dreams and what they receive from the services I can provide, it's okay with me. If it's 3, it's going to be okay with me if it's 20. But I just know that there's going to be times and years that it's going to ebb and flow.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you and I started around the same time in terms of like with the Brokery, right? Mm-hmm. I was a VIP, but when when Ryan placed me at the Brokery, you came not long after.
Yeah.
What did you think of the group that was there compared to what you're seeing now? I mean, they've seen exponential growth in the last 2 years. Like, how does that factor into how you conduct business? Do you go into the office as much? Are you at home?
Well, admittedly, I never did. Because of there being a smaller group of agents, and really it just being the Arcadia 40th Street office, I went to every one of the weekly meetings, and I enjoyed them. That's where you and I kind of hit it off, especially with regard to social media and marketing. I remember the first day she came, Trisha had done a social media shout out to a couple of people, and we really hadn't talked. And I remember it was my first thing I said to myself. I was like, I'm a freaking marketing director. I want a shout out. And I think it was about 4 weeks later that I got, a shout out. I didn't know squat about what clients were going to have, but I knew kind of social media. I knew meeting with people. So Trisha, really, you gave me one of my first motivations in that whole process.
Well, good. It was awesome. You were definitely performing way above everybody else when it came to video content.
It has evolved over time. As I am in the West Valley, about 36 miles or minutes from now at the North Central, which is Bethany Home and 8th Avenue. Street. Thank you. Yeah. The culture has changed. But I think the growth, everybody's going to go through growing pains. And I think the brokers have gone through their own growing pains. How do they do this? How do they manage now, 50 plus agents? But the core value, I think, of the individuals that I work closely with. I've had the pleasure of working with a coaching pod, which Jen has led over time. And so there's 5 of us. And we we talk frequently. We're in a text thread with each other, and we've been able to kind of help each other out along the way. And so that's my core group. There are agents at the Brokery I have not even met yet. And I don't think that's uncommon.
Not at all.
Because like you said, we're self-proprietors. We were doing independent contractors and doing our own thing. But
so who are those? Who are the other members of that pod? Just give them a little love.
Kate Fox, Jessica Justice, Matt Kelly, Ty, and
Jen.
And then Debbie Ponticus, who used to be with the Brokery, was one of our coaches as well. But they have provided so much value to the business of being an agent. And I can't, if there's anybody listening to this who's like, I don't know if I want to go into real estate, or, I think I could do the 90 hours. Great. Go do it. But know afterward that you need to get yourself with a good mentor, someone who knows the business, not just knows how to write a contract, but understands the entire process of the home buying and selling process of that. And then get into a coaching pod, because building a business, understanding your goals, working day to day, understanding your database, I mean, it's huge.
I think a P&L is what people don't get.
Yeah.
Now you manage your own P&L in your own life, in your own business.
It has 100% been the hardest thing for me. I don't like money.
Yeah.
I like having a lot of it.
Yeah. But you don't really want
to.
Managing is not easy.
Yeah.
And it's different when you're getting paid every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sure, you're getting a lower salary, and a lot of money's coming out to go to Uncle Sam for that, or your health insurance covered. But putting that all on a spreadsheet as an individual is a whole different process. And you have to remember, that's part of the time. Someone says you should be working over 40 hours. Well, good part of that 40 hours is sitting down, doing that spreadsheet, doing your P&L, making sure that all those things are in line. And that's been a big learning curve for me. Yeah.
Brad, how much, what's like the percentage that you put back into your business for marketing?
It varies. And I have to say, that's probably part of the process of the evolution in 2023 into 2024. Is really tying down a percentage and a dollar amount of what I make. I mean, truth be told, a lot of it has been survival at this point. You're like, I'd love to do a couple of mailings for under contract, and then do a whole other mailing for just sold, for the different listings that I've had. But sometimes for the bulk of, what would you say, recipients for that, I mean, you're looking at some pretty significant dough. So
you're like, I need to eat too.
You got to
pay my mortgage or whatever, and bills, and
And so even like I say, go back to even a huge contract, a multi-million-dollar home, which is a huge commission payout. You might feel like the richest person in the world at that time, but if you don't go and fill the buckets for whatever elements of your life, whether it's kids in college or whether or not it's, you've got 5 dogs and they're getting older and you need to have a vet, medical fund. I think if you don't do that, that's where there can be some trips along the way.
So do you think that social media has helped fill the gap there for maybe the inability to do mass print campaigns? Like, where do you see social media fitting into your marketing plan?
Well, because, I mean, I was the face of the theater for 10 years, which meant that, there are 85,000 patrons that would come through the doors. And I was on stage talking to them. I was on, ABC, CBS, NBC, morning shows. I mean, if there was something to be said about ABT, and I was in shows. So my sphere of influence in that group, which is largely West Valley, from Surprise to Goodyear to Avondale and lots of Glendale and Peoria. And that has translated into those people who I see on social media. And I'm active in following their lives and likes and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't have a post that I have to do every day. But I think that social media, Tricia, is a huge part of my ability to keep in contact with people at a very, very low cost to myself.
Were you able to use a database that you had already kind of created from ABT that you could kind of, or do you have to start fresh and be like, all right, these are the people I know who've been there, start active on social media?
I think just as a comparison, I know a lot of other people who are agents who worked in jobs that were wonderful for what they did, but the influence that they garnered wasn't always bringing in different contacts.
Yeah.
And, from media to patrons to international trips we would take, I would gather those people's phone numbers that would be in my phone, in my database. They weren't, just proprietary to the theater. The theater's database, those people who are subscribers and such, I don't have access to. So unless we had a touching point in some way, which there were many. And if you think of thousands and thousands of patrons, there are hundreds that I probably have access to that somebody else would not have normally had because they didn't have that relationship with them. So, that sphere of influence has been really important. And I look at the, I don't know, I think I'm going on 15 or 16 different transactions in this. I think it was 10 in the first year, and I'm at 5 now for this year. A number of them are from the sphere of influence from the theater. Yeah. And then those continue to be referrals from that. Yeah.
As long as you do a good job, right, they're going to tell their friends.
Yeah.
So here's a tricky question. What's your relationship with the owners of ABT now?
The closest, best, better. I mean, truly, Kyle is one of my best guy friends, and Cass is head of production. She's a mom to 3 boys, so we've been close, since day one as well. But I see Kyle and talk to Kyle much more than
that's cool.
And I, truthfully, and I don't think this is something I can't say. We met as friends, and then I became his employee, and we maintained the friendship throughout. But there's no way around. I mean, I keep telling him, I said, have you watched The West Wing? He's like, no. I go, you're like President Bartlett. I mean, and then, he has all the people around him. I mean, you're running a huge organization, the responsibility, you have to take off your friend hat. Like I said, it was hard to break up in 2020. It took a lot of dancing and a lot of emotions for us to let go of so many years together. But I will say I love my relationship with the theater now, and I think my relationship with Kyle, who was the producer, is better now as a friend. Yeah.
I chatted with Cass, sorry, Ryan, for about an hour at one of your coffees.
Yeah.
She's a phenomenally interesting woman.
They're extraordinary people, and I'm blessed to know some really extraordinary people. Jen is an extraordinary person. She's an extraordinary agent. She's given me the opportunity to learn from her in this. Kyle and Cass, I mean, to open a 32,000 square foot facility in the West Valley of Phoenix with your own money, borrowed, but yet you were the person. Ballsy. And to have kept it open through the downturn in 2008 through 2010. To still be open after COVID, thanks to the federal government and a lot of chutzpah on the part of the producers, and to be involved with Oleg and Tucker, for them to do what they've done with the Brokery. I just think, they're ballsy people who have done a lot. Yeah.
I think that, first of all, we should give them a plug because I think we've talked about it enough, but I mean, you still kind of do marketing for them. I mean, a lot of your life's still involved. You still live over there. You are the only say West Side ish
Brokery agent.
Agent, and I know that you came through Jen, right? And that's the introduction to that brokerage. But you don't see anybody else for the Brokery on. You don't see Brokery signs. Has that been a concern for you at all? Like being over there, going, okay, like, do people know what this is, or are people going to look at the brand and go, okay, I've never heard this, but I know what Keller Williams is, I know what Remax is, Realty Execs, West USA, all these other West Side, they're everywhere, but they're heavy over there.
I'm going to take the name of the brokerage firm out of it and tell a story.
Okay.
So, while the Brokery has built itself from its relationship from Arcadia Light, and the Biltmore especially, we can we know that those are higher and affluent neighborhoods in the Phoenix metro area. In order to then promote myself over the last years, I'm always sitting open houses, which are great opportunities. But not everybody knows in my sphere of influence that when you're sitting in open house that's a $1.5 million home and you're doing these video tours, that is not your listing. You're there sitting that for the agent who has the listing in the hopes of an unrepresented buyer coming in who's looking for a $1.5 million home. So I did a lot of that, and my social media was putting a lot of different beautiful Arcadia homes out there, a lot of Biltmore, and I then am working my sphere on cocktails and dinners, and I'd invited two gals who I just are really good friends. One I worked with, and another who's been a patron, and I've gone on the tour of New York with her with the theater, and I had them over for dinner. And part of this is part of me being Brad, and also promoting my business so that they know I'm available. They know I'm a realtor. And at one point we were talking about social media, and she goes, you are just doing so well. I'm just so proud of you. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love hearing that. I mean, like I said, I'm a ham. It's like, give me a little applause. She goes, those homes that you've been selling. And I was like, what? Because I was thinking, I think the last one I did, I just closed in Sun City for $250,000, which is awesome. I mean, doesn't matter to me. That's nothing to do with the price of a home and the client. But I said, no, those are homes that are being listed by some other agents and or our brokers. And she said, oh, well, I'm glad to know that. I didn't think you'd sell my home. Now, granted, I think she probably has a $500,000-$600,000 home in Sun City Grand. Right. Are you kidding me? And this is not her fault.
Totally.
So, and I was over in Santa Monica, California, visiting a family member who's the oldest of my dad's side of the family. And she was saying the same thing. And she made she's a very astute, my cousin Tony. And she said, look like $1 million. Always look like $1 million. Because people want to work with people who they can trust and that they know, are a shiny penny. But get out there and do videos of the houses you're listing. Get out there and see homes in the area of the West Valley that are different price ranges from the 1.5 millions. And that's what it's been a little bit of a change in focus for me. And I've been happier being able to present a wider, a better brushstroke, if you will, of what kind of properties I can offer to people in my sphere of influence. I have people who work in the arts who, might qualify right now at 180, 220. Yeah. That's a tough market. Yeah. Young families, they're having
Is there even a market?
Right. And so that's been not a challenge, but has been part of my evolution in my business is knowing that, I've had a $1.3 million sale and I've had a $220,000 sale in Sun Lakes. Both are immensely important, but I don't think people were picking up that I can work with anyone buying or selling their home.
We've had this come up before with another brokery agent as well that was out in the East Valley.
I was just thinking the same thing.
And she was...
Jolene, right?
Mm-hmm. I was trying not to say the name.
Oh, she won't mind.
Girl. I love her.
So she was saying that it was like really weird, but it was like her group of friends weren't giving her business. People that she used to work with at the school, because she used to be a principal, right, were like not giving her business because they thought the same thing. They're like, well, you're doing all these like massively expensive homes in Arcadia. And she's like, no, I'm not doing any of that stuff. But it's a good lesson learned, I think, here, because you know, people getting into the business, you know, just showing off the fancy stuff is like that's what everybody does at the beginning, and continues to show off the things. And we kind of run in the world of the Arcadia Lights and the Biltmores and the PVs. And so you see a lot of that fancy stuff, but the reality is that you should be showing the track home, the Taylor Morrison house that's in Norterra or that's over in Arrowhead, and you know, that sort of stuff. But you still have to you still want like the idea and the look as if, you know, you're able to do everything.
Absolutely, and in my continued relationship with friends who are also potential buyers or sellers, being able to work in the environment of the Brokery and the sophistication, if you will, of the type of homes that the brokers themselves are currently listing, and or other agents who have worked in the Arcadia Light Central Phoenix area, my clients who perhaps friends or clients that perhaps would be looking in that price range and for that aesthetic know that I have access to that because of the Brokery. And that's important, just as important. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's to see Oleg and Tucker really not slow down, the two of them. Like, I mean, they've got a new listing or a new sale, like a lot going on right now in a market where people are really, really struggling. But they do a really good job of trying to help the people that they're working with, right? Or that are on their team, work for their brokerage. And I think that the biggest success that they'll say as well is people find the most success by just working their deals.
Yes. Doing
their open houses. We're going to find everybody else's stuff. And so do you feel like that doing open houses is still like the best marketing you can do?
I don't feel, for me, it's the best marketing I can do. I've sat a lot of open houses. I've not had one transaction from that.
Really?
I have had some leads, and I think that's a positive thing. But for me, it's the continued ongoing communication, either telling people what's happening in the real estate world, and then adding little anecdotes of my life into my newsletter and things. The coffee events that I've had, lunches, dinners, cocktails, any of that. Just meeting people where they are, which includes no conversation about real estate. That's not why you're there. But those relationship-oriented, ongoing touch points, I think, are the most important way for me to continue to build my business. And I will sit a great open house. First of all, I like to do it. It's fun. It's great because, and there will be leads that come from that. But I will say, not to get too far off, but I think the Brokery also is offering new opportunities. You know, they're now working along with Camelot for the new Willow and Aura properties in Central Phoenix, and then out in Fountain Hills. And I'm thankful to have been asked to be one of the agents who will be able to sit Willow at 15th Avenue and Wagon Wheel. So, you know, you've got 10 lots there. They're 1.5. I think the list is 1.5, and depending on the amenities that people are going to put into those homes, there's an opportunity there that I know doesn't happen with every brokerage firm. So, happy to
So
be
they're
involved
starting
in
at 1.5?
I believe it's 1, 3, 4, or 5 for the Willow, and then the one in Fountain Hills, I believe. I'm not. Don't quote me on it, but I believe it's the 1.7, 1.8.
So you're getting into those houses for like $2 million.
I think at the end of the day, the model with the backyard, the pool, the outside kitchen, and everything decked out is probably upwards of 3.
Jeez,
they're beautiful properties. Stunning.
I think it is worthy of noting that Camelot deal just came to fruition like in the last 2 weeks, right?
It's been an ongoing relationship, but these
they locked it in.
These two new communities,
right. And Oleg and Tucker have been talking about that for like a decade, so it's really cool. Big congrats to them for this.
This didn't just happen. I mean,
right.
I think yesterday we were talking, Oleg was saying, this has been on the vision board for 10 years. So yet again, I'm a little older than Oleg and a lot older than Tucker, and I look at the dedication and diligence they have to what their dream is, and I think that vision board, and yet again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, they didn't get to where they are, and most people don't, by there not being things that didn't go right.
Oh, for sure.
So the not going right you just got to surround yourself with people that have been through that and then can lead you through your hard time. And I do feel that both of them are good at communicating and helpful, that they know that they've been through some shit and that you're going to go through it too. So that's been a good thing.
Yeah, there's Oleg has a talent for like the rah-rah, right? If you don't
His rah-rah yesterday at that meeting was pretty good.
It was awesome.
It was really good. Yeah.
And I think if you don't leave those meetings a little bit hyped
So let's
for the day.
Let's describe what happened at the meeting yesterday that was so rah-rah. I want to hear about it because I don't know.
Well, I think two things happened. You've got to be the boss, and then you have to be the rah-rah.
Yeah.
And I think he started off by saying, we've got a number of different properties available. We've got a beautiful home at Paradigm that nobody's sitting. Now, that was a hint to, you're really not. So when you're coming to me, people, and telling me you're not making any money, but no one wants to sit that open house.
Right.
He kind of did that. It's fine.
A little passive aggressive.
But that was the only passive aggressive of the 15-minute kind of.
Right. But he's so right.
He is absolutely right.
That house is gorgeous.
Yeah. But he kind of dove into, I think, telling his own story, personalizing a bit of the, like we're saying about the 10 years and these two new properties coming up and the partnership with Camelot Homes. And I think relaying to how many of us were there? 15? For the biggest meeting we've had. That grab a hold of the opportunity. Don't miss the opportunity that through our work, you're going to be able to ride on. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to be able to say to people.
The thing that I also loved about the last two meetings, or three actually, at each branch, since he just returned from Europe, he's a dreamer. He's a doer also, but like the American dream that Ryan and I have, heard many, many times.
He's more proud to be an American than any
born.
Don't know what you're telling me. I've never heard him say anything about any of that.
But he wants something. He wants everybody to dream big, and he truly, sincerely wants people to have that lifestyle that he's aspiring to. I mean, he got back from Spain. He's like, I'm going to open up, Brokery International in Spain. I'm like, I'll go.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be your branch manager.
I'll set that open house in Barcelona.
Right.
Yeah.
He's so much more than real estate. He's really about selling an awesome life and creating legacy and generational wealth and all that.
Well, Lord knows Oleg's the guy you put in front of people. I mean, he's hey, so, he's just Mr.,
what's up, baby?
Yeah, he just likes that. Tucker's more reserved. Tucker is very, he's very diligent. But what I've really liked about Tucker of late, and I noticed it on his social media and in what he's offering the Brokery agents, is he's really putting together some programs or like course lessons on how to overcome objections. And, he has a whole, he's put a study guide together that then when he comes in, it's not just, willy-nilly. Let's just talk about this a little bit. I mean, it's really like an hour and 15 minutes of some very specific, detailed elements of information, and I appreciate that about it.
Yeah,
it's very Tucker.
I think that one of the things that people don't get about Tucker, and he's grown quite a bit in this area too, is he's really well networked and very well connected for being a very quiet sort of reserved guy. Yeah. He's worked on himself, I think, to be out there more often. Especially at Arizona Country Club, he's there. Everybody knows who he is, and he's really good at everything too, which helps him be popular. But he's from Arcadia.
Totally.
He was raised in Arcadia.
Yeah.
Went to Arcadia High School.
Yeah.
And all those, even though his path was different, he went to the Marine Corps and then came back. All his friends were going off to colleges and stuff. He's still friends with all those guys that just went off to school when he went to the Marine Corps.
Right.
I don't know if they reconnected later, but he's got his whole group of friends that run very prominently in that Arcadia area. But he does a really good job of staying quiet enough that people like him.
He's ridiculously likable.
He doesn't put himself in situations where he's going to ever embarrass himself, where he's ever going to do something stupid. he's just like, Tucker's this here, you know, because he runs with a lot of my friends. So it's just, but and he's like the mystery guy.
Yeah.
That's great at pickleball.
Which makes him even like more magnetic, right? Because people are like, ooh, he's a mystery.
Doing stuff with Tucker, and he's just a good dude, you know, and his wife is lovely, super fun, way more charismatic than he is, and he's just like the good dad and, you know, a structured guy.
Very structured, yeah.
I've never met an,
amazing.
Sorry, Brad.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm interrupting you. I've never met an agent who has done a deal with Tucker who hasn't said like ridiculously great things about the guy. Like they're like, that's like the easiest.
But I don't think it was always that way.
No,
maybe not.
No.
But nowadays,
no.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some really big fans of those other agents outside the Brokery.
And it wasn't that he was a bad guy. I just think that he was just more of like just a quieter or just like black and white sort of guy. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, hey, I remember there was a time back in the day where they didn't really care if they were friends with any other agents, like from other brokerages. And so that really doesn't help you when it comes to doing cross deals. And Oleg's still very much all about like, I don't really care who's on the other side. My job is to represent my client. So I'm not going to do any backdoor deals. I'm not trying to do anything that's going to benefit maybe us more. Like, he doesn't even like the idea of pocket listings, right? You know? So he's very much like, okay, yeah, you and I might be friends, but like, this is all about this person over here that's hired me to do this. So I don't really care.
Yeah.
Tucker, I think, is just, he works better, maybe well with people than Oleg does. But Oleg's more of the, I think, definitely more the leader, the coach.
Well, and I think
dad.
they're a good balance with each other, and I think that they play that off really well. You know, truth be told, I'm not lacking in opinions, and you know, coming into real estate and everything is a whole different thing. I'm gonna put my best foot forward. You know, I'm probably gonna hold my tongue on certain things, and you know, there was a part of me that was slightly skeptical about. I was going into a whole different environment down here in Central Phoenix than my not just 55 plus, but I will tell you 75 plus group of patrons, I was worried, guys, am I going to like this? Am I going to like these guys who are uber driven and uber successful and, you know, kind of have a, not flashy, but there's a certain element to their aesthetic. You know, I don't know what the word is. I mean,
they ooze success.
It's a prejudgment of guys that maybe you think may be douchey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I've learned is Jen is the reason I was at the Brokery, and the coaching programs have continued to be, and she has led those. But it would be very difficult for me to work with people I don't like. Yeah. Because I'm not easy when I don't like people. And I really like both of them. And that's been a positive thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think it's the same thing. That's why we can maintain this relationship for so long.
Yeah.
And it's good to see they're growing rapidly right now, and but this isn't about them. This is about you.
Well, they're a big part of who I am right now, so it's important. Yeah.
Can I ask some non-real estate questions? So, when did you referenced earlier that ASU is when you got a master's in coming out?
Really wants to know about your gay life.
My gay life.
I know a little bit, but I think it's part of what makes
because he can't date you. That's why he won't date you.
It's the It's just straight up interesting. Everybody's story is unique, and I just want you to, if you're willing,
sure.
To share that.
Listen, my mom always said, I came out of the womb drumming to a different beat. I mean, I like I said, I was a terrible child. I've never had the problem with much confrontation. Really. So, but growing up, like I said, in the 70s or the 80s and the 90s, there's an element of, the whole world of the LGBTQ plus community has changed. We have to look at what the community these days is dealing with regards to trans issues that never were even part of my dialogue, back in high school myself. But my parents were older. My dad was born in 1932 and my mom was born in 1934. And while they were not overly religious or conservative, just the, passing jokes along the way that, your dad would tell or his friends would tell in the fishing boat, you knew that being gay was other. It wasn't part of the lexicon, if you will, of what their lives were. So I was always really afraid to tell my mom and dad. I mean, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I was afraid that I wasn't afraid of anything else. You know, my grandparents were much older. Like, it was a whole situation of, well, we're probably not going to tell your nana. Okay, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I had met someone at ASU, and I introduced him to my parents when they came down to meet me for a show or something like that. And I think mom and dad were leaving, and my dad, who was 68 at the time, came up to the window of the car and said, so, and my dad, this intense look he could have on his face, I know your friend's not your friend, just your friend. And I remember grabbing the steering wheel of the car and being like, holy God.
I'm nervous right now.
I know, my heart rate's up.
And he was leaning in. So, and I want your listeners, when they hear this, not to be turned off by what I say here. But my dad said to me, I said, well, Dad, we don't have to talk about it. And he said, I don't know that I want to talk about it, because when I think about it, there's things about it that I find revolting. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, in the moment, I thought, wow, that, you know, I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
But he said, you're my son, and that's all you ever need to know.
Yeah.
And I remember driving away, tears just coming down my face, and I called my sister, and my dad spent the next 6 months, my mom said, crying in the living room. He was an emotional guy. We had this beautiful living room with these windows that looked out on the West Hills, and he'd sit in there in the dark and cry. And I asked her, I said, why was he crying? She said, not because you're gay, but because you changed his dream. I wasn't
grandchildren?
Well, I wasn't going to walk down that aisle with that girl. The traditional elements of every child that's born, there are things parents see. Fast forward then to when my dad was not quite on his deathbed, but had pretty significant advanced prostate cancer. And I said, Dad, so, you know, remember that time when we were at the car and you said these things? And just so you know, over the years at ASU up through 2000, and then all the years in musical theater, Lord knows, there have been gay people just flying around. Listen, I never had to go to a gay bar because the guy in the back of the chorus was, you know, cute enough to date at that time. I said, Dad, so if I could take a pill and be different, would you want me to? And he said, and he'd met all of these wonderful people that changed his version of what he thought this community was. And he goes, absolutely not. You're exactly the way you were supposed to be, and if you took the pill, I'd be more mad than anything else. In other words, he would think that was revolting if I were to change myself. Right. So for two parents that were born in the 30s, they were awesome. They welcomed my partner of 12 years. My mom got, you know, remember those address books that you used to have the little thingy on the side that went through A to Z, and you'd pop it up?
Yep.
Yeah.
She went through the entire address book and called up the neighbors. And across the street, the neighbors had an older son who was gay, and they never talked about it. And my mom saw her in the grocery store line, and she said to her, she goes, you know, so I'd like to talk to you about Steve. I know he's gay. And the lady goes, well, you know, we've never really talked about it. My mom goes, well, we're going to. And that was my mother.
Oh, wow.
And to tell you the truth, I would never have made it through elementary school or middle school if my mom had not been an advocate for my bad behavior and learning disabilities. So those parts of me being gay, my mom was still that protector and that person who was going to say, you know, he is okay. And so, you know, like I said, being in musical theater, I've not been a gay pride guy. Like, I've not been at too many parades or wasn't hanging out at too many bars, except for when I was at ASU. You know, for the most part, pretty mundane, suburban lifestyle, pretty boring for everybody. But my friends are going to go, oh, Brad, you gay, you know, but you gay girl. That's for Michael Mackesy. Yeah, you know, I had exceptional parents and exceptional siblings who, and friends of the family that have just, their love for my parents and their love for me overcame whatever their reservations were about the gay issue. And I think that says a lot about where we've come from 1990 something to 2023. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely easier nowadays, I think, for somebody to come out maybe not to their parents, but just living in
But no matter what we do and no matter what we talk about, some element of some community or a new community we won't talk about now is always going to be other. And while, I understand how people have certain reactions to different things, at the end of the day, we live in a country where we're all supposed to live free of any sort of, prejudice or whatever you want to say about it. But, it's not easy. I wouldn't say it's easy to be gay. It's not easy to be gay. You're other. You're different.
Yeah.
You look, not to dive too deep. Some mothers were like, I really was hoping to see you in heaven. If some, there are other mothers that like, I don't want you to, get HIV/AIDS. I mean, I'm from that late 80s or into the 90s. I was right on the cusp of the drugs that came out, the cocktail for people who at that time, some were literally on their deathbed, who received the cocktail at that time is what it was called. It was a multitude of antiviral drugs that now is one single pill all these years later. And, that's one of my mom and dad's concerns was, and at the end of the day, I always said to people, it's number 10 on the list of things that define me.
Right.
Yeah. Where some might say that defines you. Well, that defines me because you say that defines me, because it's different from you. It doesn't define me, and it's not how I've gone about my life. I mean, there's just a lot of things about me that have nothing to do with that. So,
right. Yeah. It's a good perspective because, I think a lot of people that are in the military struggle with that same thing. Yeah. It's like, you might have spent, maybe you're at Vietnam, but your entire life, that was 50 years ago. Right. But your entire life revolves around the fact that you were a Vietnam vet and everything. It's just your whole identity is this. Yeah. And, but really, there's the other side. I mean, I know a father and a son. One was in the Navy and one was in the Marine Corps. One was in the Vietnam for 3 months. Another was in the Naval Academy and in the Navy for 15 years. And nothing bothered. I mean, not to say nothing bothers. Hope they don't see this, but it bothers him so much that his father is just like literally everything's about that. Every single thing is about the Vietnam War, right? And he's got PTSD and stuff, obviously, from but
an injury.
But it's just very much like, dude, this is not your identity. Do something more. Like it doesn't have to control your entire life for 50 years for your 3 months in the military. But it just takes pride in it. Yeah. Everything's about that side. So
well, I have friends in the real estate industry who perhaps work in a more conservative environment where someone's perhaps political persuasion might lend themselves to being a little more judgmental in the things that they would say. And they've wondered whether or not they should announce or, make a proclamation. And I always say, why am I going to say to anybody, no matter what their thinking is, oh, by the way, I'm gay? That's probably, like I said, not going to be the thing that I lead with. But I am going to say, oh, well, I've got a booth at Pride this week, or going out with my boyfriend this evening. I've never been a person who's going to not be me.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's throwing it in anyone's face or anything like that. But, yeah, I don't even know what the closet looks like, really. No.
Well, we don't lead with, hi, I'm Trisha, I'm heterosexual.
Exactly.
Right? So why should you?
Someone said something the other day, because there's a word that's being thrown out there, and please don't let me go down this rabbit hole, but people have been using the word indoctrination so frequently about different elements of the trans issue in society. And I always wonder, I was like, is it indoctrination when Uncle Johnny asked Julie who her boyfriend is? And she's like 6 years old. Isn't that a form of labeling at that time, right, for an individual? Is anything that's preached from a pulpit indoctrination at that time? Well, absolutely is. It's a religion. It's indoctrination. But when I walk into Target and there's a rainbow flag on a T-shirt, if that's indoctrination, let me wear the flag.
Yeah.
I don't understand and how that all equates for people. So this is probably a dangerous subject for the podcast.
I'm not worried about it. Yeah. I don't either, by the way. Yeah. I'm so, I don't know if unaware of stuff that I didn't even know why people were pissed about Target. Like, I had no idea. And then I had seen a meme of something that had to do with someone being so scared because there was a bunch of the flags and stuff behind them about, it wasn't the gay pride. It was It was like American flags.
Yeah.
And it was like how offensive that was going to be to the next group of people. Like, oh my God, now this is going to be, we got 4th of July closed now. And I'm just like, what? And that is when I found out that people were pissed at Target
about Pride.
Yeah. I was like, what? Where am I missing this stuff? I guess it just doesn't even come to my brain that it's so weird. This is going to piss a lot of people off. I really don't understand the Bud Light, why everybody's so freaked out about the Bud Light thing even. Yeah. I mean, it's so bad that like people will not even carry Bud Light in bars now. It's like, really?
Well, and
we all drink Bud Light.
I'm not. I don't.
No, we don't.
I can't speak enough about history, but I don't think that this is new. Yeah. And I think that as time's gone on, there have been different elements. And all I would say to any business or organization that is going to have pushback for their advocacy and being an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, keep on doing it. Because I actually think we've made it so far in this that the voices are louder of support than they are for dissent. So let the people do their TikToks and have the problem with different things. But at the end of the day, when PetSmart, Target, Fry's, Kroger's are all coming out and people have signed unity pledges throughout the state of Arizona for support. Cities like Glendale and Mesa and Scottsdale have signed city ordinances now that protect people in their housing and employment, where the state of Arizona does not have a law on the books that protects people in housing and employment. Mesa, Arizona, you'd think one of the most conservative cities in the state, the mayor has gone forth in the city council who have signed an ordinance to protect individual rights for LGBTQ plus people in housing and employment. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. So, you're going to have voices of dissent and people thinking that something terrible is happening. I think the voices of advocacy are louder.
I think it becomes a little bit of an ignorance as well. Just not get out, people. Get out and talk to people and go places, and it makes life a little bit easier.
What's awesome is your story about Aiden. It's so not a big deal to the generation of our children. Yeah. That, I mean, in high school, Verrado High School had some gay people, and it was no big deal. Nobody cared, nor did, it wasn't even discussed. It was that's my friend, so-and-so.
While it's uncomfortable and it's dangerous and it's wrong, the things that we're hearing in different elements of our society right now, at the end of the day, it's just what you're saying about Trey and your kids, and even I'm 51 years old. I'm 4 years away from 55 plus. Let's be clear here.
I'm closer. I'm closer.
Yeah. I'm our level, and I'm speaking for the straight cis community. Yeah. The level of care is so not there. It's a non-issue. So even the people who are fighting it, I really think in the long run, it's a dangerous platform to have, because I just don't think that's where society has gone. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Well, that's deep. How many times have you had this conversation on the podcast?
3. No,
this definitely this is the first to go this deep for sure.
Oh, by the way, Brad's a realtor.
We got a good 35, 40 minutes.
Doesn't only work on the West Valley, works all over the place. He's willing to travel.
Well, I'll say, we were talking when we started. There's lots of people in the LGBTQ plus community who are in real estate.
Yes.
Let's be clear. But, I think I've been involved in 2 prides now where the Brokery, not the Brokery, as an agent with the Brokery branding and everything, I've had a booth at Pride. And Jen and I have been steadfast in that that's something we want to continue to do. In fact, we've even talked to Tricia about this year. But
we did it last year, didn't we? Or
I
just
came to support my friends.
But I think that it is important for people, and I say this not for a younger gay or lesbian couple, but for couples who perhaps have lived their lives a little more secluded, maybe not as out as I have been able to be, to be able to feel comfortable to say to me, hey, we'd like to look for a community in Arizona or the Phoenix metro area where we get to be ourselves and feel comfortable. Well, having worked in the West Valley, knowing a lot about the 55-plus communities there, myself living in a 55-plus community because I ended up buying a condo from my mom and dad at the end of my mom's life when the estate was all done up. I can say to them, hey, I know where you probably will be most comfortable. So I don't think it's, like I said, it's not the first part of selling myself as an agent, but I absolutely put it out there for anybody who is part of the community to know that I'm going to be a safe person for them to work with. And I'm going to advocate for where their lifestyle is that has much more to do with who they are than the transaction of buying the house, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure there is sort of maybe a weirdness or uncomfortableness of that process and working with somebody that you feel comfortable with. Means everything.
I've had people who are a little older than me, couples wanting to relocate to Arizona, that I have been able to introduce to Bison Ventures because I know the environment that's here. I know that they're going to be comfortable with you guys and the assistance you give, not on the lending side, but how you deal with people.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me. And that you go back to social media, their involvement with me is because what I put out there into the world about my life. They knew to contact me via social media because they'd seen that. So yeah, Tricia, social media is really important about what you're putting out there.
We have an agent at North & Co. who, I mean, she works with all types of people for sure, but she's a gay woman, and a big part of their marketing plan is to bring together. They've lived all over the country, she and her partner, and she's almost like a magnet for the lesbian community members looking to move to Arizona. I mean, it's because not that was her intention, but it morphed into that, and frankly, it's been good for business, And she said the same thing, like we are a company that will always treat people, whatever they identify as, whatever income level they are, it doesn't matter, like with absolute 100% respect and disregard for things like sexual orientation. It's just not.
Well, if we want to go here with this is actually, we can decide what we want to cut out or not, but she had a problem with some of the things that we were doing. Not necessarily as a company, but there was just some social media things that were really not like in line with her views, and she had a lot of reluctancy of even coming here. And specifically about one person who is a great person, but had done not anything anti-gay or anything, which is just very, very masculine, almost overly masculine, right? And just so she didn't like a lot of the things that involved like the guns and just in the trucks and.
He's a Southern guy, and he's like the sweetheart.
He had a anyways, I can't go too deep, but it was like, but she was very matter of fact. She's like, so I just don't want to work with you because we don't align now. She loves him now.
Right.
Because he flipped and he went, oh, shoot, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was doing these things that were going to offend you. And then she went to me and she's like, I looked at your social media thinking that you were going to be the same.
There you go.
As him. And I went.
Perception is everything.
And she goes, but you were exactly like nothing. She's like, in fact, our like grid is super similar. She's like, we have a lot of the same interests, a lot of things. And I'm like, dude, like, and all my grid is really just work and my kids and sports and, but that's very intentional.
What's funny is that you say that, I'm thinking back, you're going to love this. Before I had ever really known Tricia, and I think she made the introduction to you, I remember thinking, God, he's good looking. I wonder if he's gay. That was before I fell in love with my gay bride over here. Me being anyway. So you can cut that out too. Yeah.
I take that as I'm flattered.
Well, you're a good looking family.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are. We have good parents.
There are many people who thought our dad was gay because he was such a great dresser.
You said that, yeah.
Well, he also did a very good flamboyant gay.
Put on.
Yeah.
He was convincing.
He was very convincing.
But even without that, he was metrosexual before metrosexual was a thing. Like the term.
Sometimes he mowed the lawn in his penny loafers, which I swear to God, I was like, why are you wearing dress shoes out mowing the lawn? But he was very much like the white collar guy that just insisted on doing all the blue collar work, right? All the trades, everything that was having done, he had to do it himself,
or doling it out to us,
which was terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't know why he'd come home from work, instead of changing everything, he'd leave his shoes on and go cut the grass.
Naked with penny loafers?
No.
Well, he had
no socks. 17
pairs of those penny loafers.
Yeah.
And some of them were the lawn mowing.
Yeah.
Shoes.
So rest in peace there, guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's been a while. All right. Well, I guess we're going to end up on this note. It's been a good one. We really appreciate you coming in.
Wow, you guys are awesome. Trisha's been one of the best partners there is, a good friend.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we're moving into this, you never know who you're going to meet, but it's been great to be involved with you. And, plug to Bison. You guys, you do an exceptional job with, it's always a pleasure to introduce clients to you because of the wrap your arms around them no matter where they're finding themselves in their journey. Yeah. And I, like I said, going back to my sphere of influence, I have a number of people I have now introduced to Bison, who Bison is now in the process of working through them, getting to the point they can find home ownership. Not everybody's going to come in with $100,000 down and a great note, any credit issues that have arisen before, but your guys' ability to give them the homework, if you will, to work through to a point where they are going to be able to be approved for a loan at an interest rate that'll work for them. That's as important to me as anything. Not necessarily that you're working with them at that time on a loan, but that there's a long-term play on it. Because I don't think everybody else is going to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love that because the wrap your arms around them thing.
Right.
Write that down. We're going to clip this moment.
Yeah.
But we really do appreciate that because
we're going to call it the herd hug.
The herd hug.
You're definitely a marketing guy.
There we go.
Well, I was so surprised that you were talking to me. You're like, members of the herd are coming to your coffee, and I was like, what is she talking about? And then I'm like, the bison.
Yeah.
The whole freaking herd loves you. And we do appreciate not just your business, but the fact that you've been so public. I don't know if you noticed this, Ryan, but we were in his newsletter last month.
Yeah.
And this Friday, his coffee, he literally put, Bison Ventures will be there, to answer any mortgage questions. I mean, we don't ask
You've been a raving
anybody.
fan for us,
Yeah.
which is super important.
Right.
And honestly, to say that it's so hard to find real, true raving fan loyal people. You think they are, but it's not, because you put a lot of time and effort with people. And, she's doing a lot of stuff, and it's not. Sometimes you wonder if all your work is worth it.
Yeah, we're being recognized.
But when you have people like yourself and a lot of the people over at the Brokery, they've been really good to her. But she's definitely got her clique. Right?
I do. Yeah, well, Brad sent us a lead today. And Jen, we're working on something for Jen, rescuing a deal.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said for, we absolutely deliver, I think, excellent customer service to anybody.
Look, you're good people. I mean, let's just be clear. Not everybody is, and not everybody always has the best of intentions, and you weed those out in time. It's nice for me to have started my career not having to weed that out. It's like being introduced to you guys from the very beginning, first VIP, but then into your, the iteration of Bison has been, it's great. And
we appreciate it.
Love it.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a wrap.
Yeah. Brad York with The Brokery. Hey, check us out on all the social media platforms, Into the Storm. And you can also find us on YouTube at Into the Storm. Like and subscribe, please. Share with all your friends. Thank you to Bison Ventures for allowing us to have this awesome space here for our podcast. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Trey. And thank you to Muscular Moving Men. These guys are buff. I'm just kidding. They're married.
Is that really?
Muscular Moving Men. We use them for all our residential and commercial moving. They're close friends of ours, and they maneuver the same way that we do here at Bison
I actually
Ventures.
thought this was going to be a new dating site for
I'm going to tell Justin Josh this.
Yeah, they're big brokery partners.
They
too.
are big brokery partners as well.
Yep.
And obviously, thank you to VIP Mortgage for allowing us to be a part of this as well. They are a sponsor. We are a mortgage company, people. So anybody out there looking to buy a house, maybe you need to do a cash out refi. Maybe you have a lot of credit card debt and you want to lower those payments. You can still get a deal on a refinance cash out refi. But at the end of the day, we do this podcast to brand our company, but we do love just bringing in people that have cool stories, that do cool things. And so this isn't just about real estate for sure. So thank you, everybody out there. Check us out. Appreciate it. Bye.